Hey, I wanted to take this video and showcase how Xano can take data from a third-party API, transform it, and then use Xano's API to then be able to display that transformed data from that third-party source on Bubble. So I'm going to create an API endpoint from scratch here by hitting Add API Endpoint, hit Start from Scratch. And today we're going to work with something light and fun. We're going to work with a Star Wars API and use some data from the Star Wars movie. So I'm going to simply call this maybe Star Wars, let's say planets today, and I'll hit save. So now that we're in this API endpoint, I'm going to go into my function stack here, and I'm going to add an external API request function. And the cool thing about Xano is it lets us actually just enter in the URL from an external API endpoint, So I've got a tab open here of this Star Wars API. And right here that I have highlighted, this will actually give me data on different planets from the Star Wars universe, or galaxy, I should say, right? So if I come back to Xano, and in this URL parameter here, I'll just paste in that API endpoint, and I'll hit save. And now let's run this. I'll go piece by piece so we can see what we get at each step. So when I run this, we see we get this full response back. Here's our planets down here. But let's say that I only want to work with the data from our planets, right? So starting with Tatooine and going on down. So what I can do is I can actually hit this copy result as JSON here, and you'll see why in a second. And this actually copies it to my clipboard. Next, I'm just going to go to data manipulation and actually create a variable. And we'll call this our results here. And now the value is going to be this variable from this external API request. And then I'm going to hit subpath. And when I do that, you'll see I can paste in the response, that JSON response that I just copied. And what this will allow me to do is see a visual path so I can drill down and just get the results that I want. So here you can see I want to go into response, now the result, and finally the results. And now here are each one of those objects, or the list of all my planets, if you will. So I'll choose all of them. We're going to work with all of them today. I'll hit save. And now let me actually change the response first here from the API call to just my results. When I go ahead and run this, we'll see a list of my planets, or the Star Wars planets, and then all this additional information to them. Okay, so now that we've drilled down, let's look at transforming some of this data. So if you look, these planets include information like rotational period, orbital period, diameter. Let's first take diameter here. Assuming this is in kilometers, let's actually see if we want to see the diameter in miles. How would we do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now do data manipulation and actually do a loop, or for each loop, because we have a list of planets here. So this will allow us to loop through all that data so we can now transform it at the same time. So now here the list is my results, right? That's a list of those planets. And here I'll go ahead and I'll say define functions. And these will be called item in this for loop. So I'll go ahead and I'll do data manipulation. And I'm going to do update variable. And I'll click into this function, the existing variable. Now it's our item. So I'm going to say item dot, I can't spell today, diameter. And then we'll update it by itself, and we'll say dot diameter to use dot notation to just get to the diameter. And now let's see, I've got this tab open here, which tells me 1 kilometer to a mile. So I'll actually simply copy this here. Let's go back to Xano. And now I'm going to add a filter here, and this will allow me to do some math. So I'll go to choose filter. I'll go to math, and let's look for multiply. I could have also just typed it in here, but I'll say multiply, and this number here will convert that into kilometers into mile, and I'll hit update. And let's take it one step further. Let's say I don't want a lot of decimal places. So let's actually go back to math, and we have this round. So round to decimal with optimal precision. So I'll go ahead, let's say we want 2 decimal places. I'll hit update, and now I'll hit save. And so now if I go ahead and I run our results, we'll see we have this updated or transformed diameter here. So now we have Tatooine is 6,500 miles in diameter. And we can see all in the blue here, this is our transformed number. One other thing I want to do, just because I'm curious, let's actually look at the orbital period in regards to what that would be reference to Earth. So I'm going to actually update another variable within this loop. I'll go to update variable and I'll click into here and I'll say item once again. And we're going to say orbital, I believe it was underscore period. And so once again, I will just take item here, dot orbital underscore period. And then let's go ahead, let's add a filter here. And this time it will be division by how many days in a year? 365. Let's hit update. And now let's also add on, let's round that to also decimal places here. And hit update and hit save. And now if I actually go ahead and run this, we'll see now that we have, okay, Tatooine is 0.8 Earth years, Alderaan is 1. That's nice. It might be a nice place to live. But anyways, as you can see, all this data is now transformed. So next step is let's display it in Bubble. So I'm going to go into Bubble here, and Bubble has this plugin called API Connector, and it allows us to connect to third-party APIs, in this case being Xano. So I'll actually hit Add New API. I'll call this Star Wars, and then I'm going to go ahead and expand this API call. And here I can paste in my Xano API URL. So if I jump back to Xano, and in this API endpoint, I can click this endpoint URL right here, and it copies it to my clipboard. I'll come back to Bubble, and I'll simply just paste that in here. And now we just need to initialize the call. So when I do that, it will connect, and we'll see here is all of our data. And if we look at diameter and orbital period, it looks like that data has successfully been transformed. So let's go ahead and save that. So now that that's saved here in Bubble, it looks like I didn't start from blank, but that's okay. Let me go ahead and add a new blank page here. I'll just call this blank. I'll hit create. Wait for this to be created. Okay. Now let's just display a list of those planets, right? So I'll go ahead, I'll do a repeating group here, just right here, nice in the middle. And the type of content is going to be an API call, and the data source, get from an external API call. And now we'll pick that Star Wars API call that I just created. So I'll hit close. And next, what I'm going to do is I'll just drag a text box here. And let's call this, let's insert dynamic data. We'll do current sales API call, and we'll say the name. And those will be the name of all our planets. Let's take it one step further. Let's say I want to do the diameter too of the planets. Let's drag in another box here. I'll click insert dynamic data, current sales API call, and diameter. And now maybe after, let's also say this is miles, just to clarify. And we could also do the orbital period here as well. Might need to make this bigger. I'm not quite a design expert, but you get the gist here. So this I'll make a little bit bigger, and then we'll do insert dynamic data, current sales API call, orbital period, and then we'll say something like, this will be Earth years. Okay, so now that we have all that data, let's go ahead, let's actually preview this here in Bubble. And this will just take a second, but here you go. As you can see, so what we've been able to do is we've been able to hit an external API call, drill down to the specific data we wanted, and then we were able to transform all that data, a list of all that data at that, and then connect it to Bubble and display that transformed data here on the front end. So I hope this was helpful. I know it was a little long-winded, but this should definitely help you with Xano and then displaying third-party data.